So, Jeremy, could you give me a quick overview of your career?
Well, my name is Jeremy Vickery, and I have worked in the film and games industry now for 18 years. I graduated from a small college, small at the time, Full Sail University from Orlando, Florida in 1997 with a degree in digital media. It was very vague and covered everything from CD-ROM authoring, virtual reality, computer animation, video editing, Photoshop, kind of everything. At the time there were no schools that were really teaching animation, so I knew that I wanted to do animation. So when I got out of school, actually while I was in school, Toy Story came out. It was in 1995, and I thought, I want to go work there. I want to make movies like this. I want to work in this industry. It's pretty awesome. And so I applied to Pixar right out of school and did not succeed. I got my letter that said, thank you very much, but your skills don't fit our needs. But I kept trying, and I ended up getting hired at a small animation studio in Chicago. So moved to Chicago, worked for a company called Big Idea Productions on a kids' TV show called VeggieTales. And so it's dancing cucumbers and tomatoes and very fun, simple show. I was a 3D modeler, was my first job. And so I worked there for 3 years, doing modeling, texturing, rigging of all the characters, props, sets, everything. So there was only 25 of us at the start. And then by the time I left in 2000, there were over 200 people at the studio, so it had grown quite a bit. But I wanted new challenges, and so I ended up getting another job with a very small studio in Atlanta, Georgia, called Fathom Studios. They don't exist anymore. And there was a group of 15 of us that were going to make a feature animated film with off-the-shelf software. And it was really revolutionary in the time, in the year 2000. Being outside of Hollywood, there were not many studios, and it was an amazing experience. And the film, most people have never heard of it, called Delgo. It did come out 10 years later, but I worked there for 3 years. There was basically only 2 jobs at the company. There were those who would become lighting artists and those who would become animators. And so the ones who became animators focused in on modeling, rigging, and animating the characters, and those who would be lighting artists focused in on modeling, shading, lighting, effects, compositing, kind of everything for the film. And during that time I discovered lighting. And became the lighting director. So I worked there for 3 years and kept applying at Pixar during that time, and then I noticed they were hiring lighting artists, and I was doing lighting at the time, so I said, why not? I'll try again. Made another demo reel and sent it off, and to my great surprise in 2003 I got a call from them, and so I moved to California and I worked on The Incredibles, Cars, Ratatouille, and WALL-E as a lighting artist. And then in 2007, I decided to, at that point I had, my wife and I had a son, and so we decided to move back to Florida to be closer to family. And so I took another 3.5 years as a freelance artist, and I did work for all kinds of different clients, lots of studios, Disney, Lego, Sony, Ubisoft, a whole bunch of smaller advertising firms, all kinds of different stuff. A lot of illustration, concept design, some lighting consulting, a whole bunch of different things. But I realized that I missed the studio environment, so in 2011 I went back to Pixar and worked on Brave and Inside Out and the 2 short films, The Blue Umbrella and Toy Story of Terror, which was a television special. Then after that, that brought me up to 2014. As much as I really loved working in the industry, Pixar was a wonderful company, but it was also getting very, very big. And so I decided I needed a break. So I took a year off, and just a year sabbatical, and I feel fortunate to be able to have had time to take a year off. And then after that year, I just spent the time painting and drawing and creating. And at the end of that year, I decided to try to find a smaller studio again to join. And I got hired at Ubisoft in Quebec, Canada, where I was at for a year. And by the time this will be out, I ended up shifting and moving back to the US. Keep getting drawn back to California. This will be the 3rd time I've moved to California, but I'll be working as a lighting artist at Naughty Dog. So that brings you my 18 years of my career.
And what triggered the switch from movie to video games?
The switch from movie to video games, I feel it was actually a desire to just be involved more creatively. Yeah, I had a wonderful creative role at Pixar, but it was a very specialized. There's 1,200 people there, so it was a very specialized role, and I wanted a smaller studio where I could have more kind of use more of my skills, and to me the games world had a lot more potential. The amount of change that has happened in the film industry compared to the games industry over the past 20 years, the games has increased dramatically, and there's just so much more you can do with it. You can tell stories kind of like film that are very emotional. You can have completely non-story related games. You can do anything you want with the designs. I just felt that this world is just, there's more options than what's out there in film. I also wanted to stretch myself beyond just Pixar family animation and just try something new. And so when the opportunity arose for me to get into games, I said, why not? Let me try this, and I've enjoyed it a lot so far.
And what attracted you to the field of animation?
The field of animation, as a child, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I loved art. I've always drawn. All the way back, I always, have drawings from when I was 2 and 3, years old, that my mother still has. I've also loved music, and, I consider being a professional musician, and I love acting and storytelling and cinema. I've, always been a fan of cinema. I've also really loved technology, and my great-grandfather was an inventor. He actually holds the patent for the timer on the electric traffic light, which is pretty cool. So I always respected him, as an inventor, and I wanted something that had all of those in it. And so for me, animation was it, because it had timing, story, acting, music, motion, art, technology, all in one. And so when I was in high school, I didn't know what to do, but I took off for a couple of years, traveled for 2 years after high school before I went to university. And during that time, I kind of narrowed it down to, oh yeah, that's it, animation. Animation has everything. So that's, what I wanted to do. And I love, I think the thing for me, between the games world and the film world is that we're creating spaces, environments that you would want to visit. You'd want to get into that world and actually be there, that the imagination side of it, will draw you in and say, oh, this is a place that doesn't really exist, but I want to, and I want to make it as believable as possible. And so that's, to me, the challenge, whether it's, two-dimensional concept design or illustration, or, a movie or a game. It's all about making worlds that I would want myself to go visit.
And in your mind, what makes great lighting?
What makes great lighting? Very good question. I guess there's a technical answer and an emotional answer. So there are a few things that make good lighting. First thing is you've got a two-dimensional image at this point. You've got a 2D plane of a television set or a movie theater or a flat page, and you've got to convey three-dimensional information. So good lighting will show the forms and shapes of those objects. Good lighting will also help tell the story, whatever story there is. It'll draw your attention to what it needs to be. And thirdly, it'll give a mood. It will push the subconscious of the viewer in a direction, that kind of lets you feel, what you need to feel for that story. If it's done well, it's usually invisible. You don't pay attention to the lighting. You feel the right thing at the right time, and you look at the right place, and so good lighting will just draw you in. It'll be that icing on top of the cake that sucks you into the story and just makes the world so much more believable. And to me, it's amazing that you can light things that's just okay. It can just show the shape and the form, but it's the subtlety. Lighting is a craft, much like many other crafts in the arts, where it's easy to learn and takes a lifetime to master. And so that's what I love, is the subtlety of what lighting can be. And which is a really exciting time now in games, is games are finally getting to the point where they can hire lighting artists. It's traditionally just been a level designer's role to just slap in whatever works. Here's your sun, here's your fill. It has no occlusion, it has no bounce, it has no craft to it. It's just, technically it works. And now we're cresting that point where it can actually be an art form in games to say, no, what can we really do with this space? How can you really make it beautifully lit? How can you use that now as a tool, like it's been used in cinema, or it's been used in theme parks, or any area that uses lighting, And so that's it. Pretty exciting.
Cool. And overall, what's your process to reach good lighting? I mean, what's your process from inception of a scene to the final pass?
Ooh, that's a good question. My process for achieving lighting, it really depends on the size of the team. But everything will start with a sketch and some reference. So definitely we'll focus on what other images give the mood that I want, or what parts of those images, and do a lot of research and reference. The same thing would happen with a large company. Say at Pixar, the concept artists would work together with the director of photography to plan out, okay, what is the best way that we can convey the mood of this sequence that you're in. And they'll do concept designs, color keys, and reference from other films as well, and gather that all together before the lighting artist ever starts. And they'll look through the shots in the sequence and kind of go, well, the sun could be coming from over here, and they paint a few color keys. I've luckily been involved in a lot of color key painting as well. When I was working on Ratatouille, I was given a few sequences, and I felt really honored to be able to have this, that they were sequences that were small. They were all the shots at Paris at night, on the random, just on the streets, and there wasn't enough time to really design them out. So we kind of painted my own, kind of worked together with the director of photography and planned where this would go, what would we do with it, would it be, what time of day would it be, and we got a plan in 2 dimensions, and then we started building it in 3 dimensions. So usually we plan, when we get into the 3rd dimension for lighting, we get the key light, and you get your fill light, and you get your bounce lights, and you figure out, you kind of work big to small, get the core shaping of the characters, and then you start adding all those little details of, are the reflections in the eyes in the right place, how strong would they be, are you going to fake anything? Are you going to add extra rim lights or extra bounce lights or bounce cards, or depending on the technology you're using, what extra tricks can you do to add polish and to make it really pretty? Can you darken in any corners? Are you going to have any vignette? Are you going to have any post effects? Are you going to have any bloom or glare? What are you going to do with the sun? What are the colors in the sky? What is the atmosphere? What is the reflections, the refractions? How do the shaders work? Working very closely with the shading artists too, to say, well, this object, I can either tone down the light on it or I can change the shader. And it's this very collaborative process of kind of refining all those little details until it's as close to truly convey the mood and make sure that it's showing the form and it's telling the story, and so everything's all together.
Yeah. Pixar and your other projects have all different styles.
Yeah.
To them. Do you change the way you work? Do you adapt your workflow depending on the style of the film?
Yes, definitely. We definitely changed the feel and the technology that we would use. Early in pre-production, it's decided what the style will be. Is it going to be super realistic? Is it going to be very stylized? Like the difference between working on The Blue Umbrella, that we went for a very photorealistic, very kind of post-processed photo look to it, versus Inside Out, that had a very colorful, playful, much less realistic, very stylized feel. And we changed the technology dramatically between those two in order to achieve the look. We would change even the whole structure of the way the team works, based on the early tests. Usually there'd be some lighting leads with the director of photography that would do early tests to say, okay, what is it that will achieve that look, and then how do we structure the team to utilize that? How do you structure your files and your comp scripts and everything that you're putting together to make it work for that style, which is part of the fun of you work on a film for a year or 2, and then you change to another film, and it's like working at a new company. It's something completely new. If you're in the world of Cars and then suddenly you're working on Ratatouille, or you're working on WALL-E, or Inside Out, each of those films has its own kind of drive forward. Or for me, working in games too, each game will have a different feel to where you're guiding the world to be.
Yeah. And throughout your career, you must have encountered some highs and lows.
Mm-hmm.
What was your biggest obstacle that you have overcome?
I think at the beginning of my career, many people would think the biggest low would be that first push, just getting your foot in the door. That wasn't as much of a low for me. I was highly motivated and I was willing to take whatever, super low paying job, entry level. But it was exciting, it was new, just to be able to get paid to do art. For me, the low point really came, and the hardest thing to overcome was years later when I decided to make the career shift and take that year sabbatical. And I thought, okay, I have a lot of experience, I've been working at Pixar, it should be easy to get a job. And then when it wasn't, that was a challenge to go, am I doing something wrong? I applied to 55 different companies and heard back from almost none of them. And that's where I realized that timing is everything, and your experience, you can't take things too personal. You have to just say, well, are they looking for someone with my background, and do they, can they hire somebody from the United States, can, whatever, all those little details that all add together, and everything, the planets must align in order for the job to be, available. And I think that was hard, just trying to find, what do I really love to do? What do I want to do? I really love lighting, but I also, really love concept design. And so trying to find those two worlds actually are very different from each other. And, trying to pick and choose to go, do I commit and try to just go into concept design? And I tried that for a while and I was like, no, I really love lighting. I'm going to stick with that, even though there's some technical headaches that come along with it. So, yeah.
And on the opposite, what was your biggest victory, the moment you were the most proud of what you have crafted?
I think at the end, all the hard work of each film that I've worked on, the moment that it comes out in theaters and you go to watch it in a movie theater and you see the people laugh and and feel the emotion of the movie, I think that to me that's really, really rewarding. Of all the projects that I've worked on, the one I would have to say I'm the most proud of, I was the master lighting lead on the Blue Umbrella, the short film that came out before Monsters University. And I really, really enjoyed working on that film. It had its own unique challenges. We were using new software that we had never used before. We were going for a different look than Pixar had ever done before. It was really ambitious, the amount of geometry in it. We had thousands of cars and vehicles and city streets, at night in the rain that's all wet and glistening. And so it was a big technical challenge. And so being able to overcome that, and I remember, a couple of different reviewers had said this was Pixar's first time using live action footage, and we're like, no, that was all CG. So it was an amazing compliment to go, no, we generated all of that. There was nothing live action at all. So to me, that was the proudest moment. And we had a really small team as well, so we were all very, tight-knit group and really enjoyed, producing that.
You had different positions at Pixar. I mean, master technical lighting, lighting artists. Could you describe the differences between those?
Sure. Everyone at Pixar comes in as a shot lighting artist. So there's different tiers, kind of a structure to the way it's set up. The highest tier is director of photography. That person's job basically is to plan the look of the lighting and to approve everything, with the art director and the director of the film. Below them are lighting leads, and so there's usually 2 or 3 leads per project. There's a characters lead, there's an environments lead, and there's a technical lead. And technical deals with all of just the infrastructure of the technology, and those tend to be very technical, kind of programming oriented people. The character artist just focuses in on how do we make the characters look good and consistent, and the environment lighting artist will work on the environments themselves. Under that you have master lighting artists who will take each sequence and say, okay, for this sequence I'm going to put the light, like there's a light over here and there's light from the window, and I will try to get one setup that works for all of the shots in that sequence. So say in Ratatouille you're in the kitchen and it's at night. What color does the moonlight come in and how do you do all the reflections in the kitchen? And plan that. And then shot lighting artists will take the lighting that has been made by the master lighting artist and they will craft that shot from that angle. And they'll say, with the director of photography, there needs to be a little bit more rim light, and there needs to be more bounce. The reflections in the eyes need to move. The contact on the floor needs to be stronger or less. There's something that's, glowing in the background and is distracting, so let's reduce that. Let's add some extra specular on the front on the nose to, shape it. And so the shot lighting artist really takes it from the rough, to the final. Everybody does shot lighting. all the way through. Master lighting artists are people that have done shot lighting well enough that they're given an opportunity to kind of expand and try to, they're responsible for a whole sequence. A lot of communication has to be done. Usually the lighting leads are the ones who communicate with the other departments, extensively every day to day to find problems and how to fix it. You work with the characters team to make sure the shading on the characters is good, to work with the environments team to make sure that the base shading is really solid, and will work under all the different lighting setups that'll be used during the film. And so there's a lot of communication that has to go on, as well as mentoring of new lighting artists that come on and trying to make sure that even if they're not new to the industry or new to the company, they're new to the project. So if they're coming off of another film that's completely different, you need to have people that will kind of help.
Yeah. And what was your role at Ubisoft? Because it's a little different with video games.
Yes, my role at Ubisoft was unique. I was hired as an assistant art director with a focus on lighting. It was basically like being a director of photography, having somebody who's responsible for the look and the feel of the way the lighting was going to go in the game, and to guide the direction of the lighting artists. We worked together, closely to kind of guide the look. So there was concept design involved in it. There was a lot of research that was involved in it. And then there was, actual hands-on the technology and working with the different groups to make sure that we had the tools to push the lighting forward. So that was kind of a unique role. Not a lot of game studios have a strong lighting team. Some studios are getting into that. So that's where my new job at Naughty Dog will be really fun, because there is a really big push. It's very different from Ubisoft in that it's not open world, it's more linear, it's more like film. And so my background, I think, will be able to be utilized in a different way than it was at Ubisoft. And there's a much larger team of lighting artists who can really craft each sequence in the game. So that'll be a real fun new challenge.
Yeah. What is creativity for you?
What is creativity? I think creativity is taking your experiences and your whole life, everything that you've seen, everything that you've done, and putting your fingers into that and coming up with something new. I don't believe that there is such a thing nowadays as something that is truly unique and new. It's just it's like taking Lego pieces. The Lego pieces are all the same, but the approach that you put them together will form something that is unique and new, that's never been done before, even though everyone else has the same pieces. So for me, creativity is that putting part of yourself and your experiences into a project that speaks to other people. Communication. Basically what we do, as artists is communicate ideas. So creativity is putting yourself into those ideas and making something that you're creating from scratch, or
It's fun to ask this question because it's only one word and everybody interprets it really differently.
Right, yes, yeah.
What would you tell students that want to reach a position and get to your level? What would you tell them to do to be able to become a lighting artist?
Create. Never stop creating. Spend more time actually doing what you love to do rather than talking about it or learning about it. Classes are good, learning is good, forums are good, but the thing that will really move you forward in your career is actually doing the art. Like, you can have somebody who talks about drawing all day, but unless you actually get your paper, and pencil, you're not going to increase as an artist. The same with, being an animator or being a lighting artist or being a modeler or any art form that you want. Do as much as you can, and don't be afraid to fail. Push your limits. Try something new. Try something crazy. Failure is really the place where you discover new things. There's been many times where I had something in my mind that I wanted, and it's not until I pushed the software to go, look at this weird value. I don't know what this does. Let me just push it. Let me set it, instead of, it looks like 0 to 1. Let me type in 100 and see what happens. And sometimes those discoveries have been really useful to go, oh, this is a way to fake something. This is the way to trick it. This is the way to try something new. And so don't be afraid. Try crazy things. And don't expect every single thing that you create to be awesome. Expect 10% to be decent. And if you have that expectation that 90% of what you do is meant for throwing away, don't think of everything as a portfolio piece. Think of everything as a tablet of experiment. You don't hand somebody a portfolio with every drawing that you've ever done. You take the best out of that. So as you're creating and working, realize that most of this stuff you're going to throw away. I don't have anything in my demo reel that was there from the first 3 companies I worked for, but it was good, kind of a building process. I'm always learning, always going. So as long as you have that passion and the motivation, and also the last thing that I would say to students is find what you really love, not what your teachers are telling you to love, but what you yourself love doing. I remember when I was in school, animation was the thing that got promoted. You want to be an animator, and it's a worthy career. It's really fun. There's a lot of, story in that, but it wasn't for me. I really don't like animation. I love the environments. I love what's behind the characters. I love, the lighting of the worlds and the shapes and the forms of the environments. And so try to find what you love to do and do that, and focus in on it.
Yeah. What's the future of lighting?
For me, the future of lighting, what I'm really excited about in games, and what I think 10 years down the road, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, what I expect is the Matrix. I want there to be environments that you get immersed in, which is exciting to think about VR and where that's going and the level of realism and the beauty in it. And I want to, when I watch something like Avatar and everyone's like, I want to go to Pandora. It's like, with games, we're getting closer to having that experience where you actually feel like you're in other worlds. And so for me, the future of lighting goes in that direction. That's that more immersion, more sense of realism and believability, and just more craft, in it. The more things mature, the more you can use the technology to make something incredible. And I'm just excited to be a part of that at all.
Great. Thank you so much for sitting with me. It was really nice.
Absolutely.